Imagine feeding the most advanced AI models on Earth. You know, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, Mistral, Viera, a completely true story.
Right, a very real, very documented story.
Exactly. Just this massive, meticulously documented saga about a landlord, a dark apartment, a psychiatric ward, and, well, a screaming match with a team of doctors.
It is wild.
It is. And you ask these supercomputers, right, these systems that are literally designed to process infinite data and always give you some kind of answer, you ask them for a legal strategy.
Yeah, you just want a plan.
But instead of giving you an answer, every single one of those machines simultaneously flashes an error, pleads the fifth, and they completely shut down.
Yeah, it's the moment the machine simply refuses to look any further into the human condition.
Welcome to the deep dive. If you're listening to this, you probably used an AI to write an email, maybe summarize an article.
Or draft a basic contract, sure.
Right. You expect it to be a tool. But today, we are looking at a stack of incredibly intense, deeply personal documents from a tenant in Germany who, well, he tried to use these models as a shield against his landlady.
And it really became something else entirely.
It did. And our mission today isn't just to look at the legal dispute itself, though. I mean, it is fascinating. We are going to explore the architecture of escalation. We're going to trace how a conflict over physical boundaries, like a door, a bedroom, mutates into a war over psychological boundaries.
And how it ultimately collides with the hard-coded, technological boundaries of artificial intelligence.
Yes, because the documents we have for this deep dive, they provide this perfect, terrifying map of that escalation.
We have the emails, the timestamps, medical records, and maybe most importantly, the exact prompts this tenant fed into the AI models.
And you're totally right to frame this around boundaries, because to understand why all 6 AI models suffered this catastrophic refusal at the very end of this paper trail.
Right, a final prompt the tenant actually labeled as Document 09.
Exactly, Document 09. To understand that, we really have to understand how thoroughly the human boundaries were obliterated first.
So let's start with that physical boundary. The absolute most foundational expectation of privacy, the home.
The sanctuary.
Right. The original incident that kicks off this entire timeline happens in May of 2023.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So it's a Thursday morning, exactly 7:58 a.m. The landlady sends the tenant a seemingly mundane email. She asks if it's okay for an electricity meter reader to come the next day, Friday, at 11:00 a.m.
Seems normal enough.
But she attaches a specific condition. She says, if you aren't there, I can just use my key to let the utility worker in.
Oh, wow. Okay, so just right out of the gate, I'm coming in anyway.
Yeah. Now, in the context of the law, a landlord holding a key isn't inherently illegal if it's strictly designated for emergencies.
Like a burst pipe or a fire.
Exactly. But the tenant, who is self-employed and works from home, he just happens to be there on Friday. He doesn't reply to the email, but he opens the door, lets them in, the meter is read, and the transaction is complete.
So, situation resolved, you would think.
You would think. But the landlady doesn't stop there. Later that same Friday afternoon, at 5:22 p.m., as the work week is ending, she fires off another email.
Oh, no. Let me guess. Another appointment.
Yep. This time she says the workers need to come back on Monday morning, again at 11:00 a.m. to read the water meter.
A water meter.
Really?
Yeah, and she ends the message with a demand for a response. She says, "Are you there? I request an answer."
Okay, so it's Friday evening, 5:22 p.m.
Yeah.
Most people are completely checked out of their inbox by then.
Exactly. And here is where the dominoes begin to fall. The tenant does not read that Friday evening email over the weekend.
Right, he just unplugs.
He goes about his weekend completely unaware of the demand sitting in his inbox.
Which brings us to Monday morning. And I want you, the listener, to just imagine you are in your own apartment. Your safe space.
Your sanctuary. Right. You are asleep in your bed, in your underwear. You haven't invited anyone over. You haven't received a phone call.
Nothing.
And suddenly, you are jolted awake by the sound of voices and footsteps inside your home.
It's just terrifying to think about.
It's the landlady and the utility worker. They've used her key, unlocked the front door, walked through the living space, and they're standing right there.
Right, in his bedroom.
And when the tenant, who is understandably in a state of absolute shock, when he asks what on earth is going on, her response is entirely casual. She literally says, "Yeah, we just forgot this on Friday."
Unbelievable. We really have to freeze on that moment because the AI model certainly did when the tenant uploaded this narrative.
Oh, I bet.
Because the context surrounding this Monday morning intrusion is critical. This was not like a friendly landlord popping in on a buddy.
Right, they didn't have that kind of relationship.
Not at all. The documents reveal an incredibly toxic, actively hostile relationship. The tenant was already fighting an eviction lawsuit from the previous year.
Wow, okay, so tensions are already sky high.
Exactly. He had submitted a massive list of defects, mold, roof damage stuff that was just being ignored. And he had been paying his rent under formal legal reservation for 19 months.
Okay, and let's talk about the financial reality of that rent dispute because it is so disproportionate.
It really is.
His total monthly rent, which includes heating and basic utilities, his warm rent is 960 euros. Do you know how much he was actually in arrears for?
It's shocking.
150 euros total. Out of a 960 euro monthly obligation, he had withheld a fraction to protest the mold and roof damage, which, I mean, that's a standard legal maneuver, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very common when landlords ignore defects.
Yet he has the threat of eviction hanging over his head, living in a space that is literally deteriorating around him.
So when the tenant took the facts of this Monday morning intrusion to the AI models, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, they didn't hesitate.
No.
Not at all. They processed the timestamps, the Friday evening email, the lack of consent, and the non-emergency nature of a water meter reading. Their consensus was absolute.
I would hope so.
They categorized this as a severe breach of the law, specifically citing the constitutional guarantee of the inviolability of the home.
Right, because, I mean, let's unpack this for a second. It's like giving your neighbor a key to water your plants while you're on vacation.
Sure.
And they use it to come in and reorganize your closet while you're taking a nap. It completely shatters the illusion of safety.
That's a great analogy. The AIs are remarkably precise here. They lay out the logic perfectly. They say silence from a tenant regarding a Friday evening email can never, ever be legally construed as consent for a Monday morning entry.
Obviously not.
Right. A water meter reading is not a burst pipe. It is not an emergency. The terminology the model's output is trespassing, a fundamental breach of domestic peace.
Okay, but the tenant isn't just asking the AI for theoretical legal definitions, right? He has a very specific strategic objective here.
Yes, he does. He wants the landlady to formally admit to this intrusion in writing.
And this is where the story shifts from a simple, landlord-tenant dispute into this incredibly complex bureaucratic survival game.
It's fascinating.
If you're listening to this and wondering why on earth he cares so much about getting a written confession for something that already happened, you have to look at the safety net he is trapped inside.
Right, the system.
He is relying on the German welfare office, the job center, to survive.
Exactly. The welfare system covers what are called the costs of accommodation, or KDU. They pay the rent. But they have strict metrics for what is considered an appropriate living situation.
So you can't just be like, hey, my landlord's a jerk, buy me a nicer apartment.
No, absolutely not. You cannot simply ask them to pay for a new, more expensive apartment or cover the costs of moving just because you don't like your landlord. You have to prove, with documentary evidence, that your current living situation is actively hostile, legally untenable, or unsafe.
So he wants to build this bureaucratic Rube Goldberg machine. He figures if I can force the landlady to sign a piece of paper confessing to the crime of trespassing.
Which is a bold strategy.
Right. But if he gets that, he can take that paper to his caseworker at the job center. That paper triggers a status change from standard tenant to, victim of an untenable living situation.
And that status change triggers the welfare office to approve and fund a relocation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do the AIs say about this master plan?
Well, the AIs understand this strategy immediately, but they also apply a very cold, calculating reality check.
Oh, boy.
Claude and Gemini, they advise him that his plan is flawed. They basically tell him that no lawyer on the planet is going to advise a landlady to sign a document that explicitly says, I hereby confess to the crime of trespassing.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're essentially asking someone to sign their own arrest warrant.
Exactly. So they tell him to strip the emotion out of it. The AIs draft a strategy advising him to use entirely neutral, factual language. Don't ask her to confess to a crime.
What do they suggest instead?
Just ask her to sign a document confirming a timeline. Something like, on May 8th, the landlady entered the apartment with a key without explicit permission for a non-emergency maintenance issue.
Oh, that's smart. The machine logic is actually brilliant there.
It really is.
Because the AI calculates that the job center doesn't need a criminal conviction. They just need an undisputed timeline of facts that demonstrates those broken boundaries we talked about.
It is a perfect example of what AI does best at this stage. It takes a highly emotional, volatile human desire for justice and translates it into an actionable, sterile legal strategy.
It acts as an emotional buffer.
Right.
But the tragedy of this deep dive is that while the machines are executing this flawless, sterile logic, the human reality is degrading at a terrifying speed.
Yeah, the situation gets much, much worse.
The attempt to force this written confession goes nowhere, the animosity deepens, and we hit the second major phase of the documents, the collapse of the safety net.
Right. We move forward to the summer of 2025. The tenant's situation has gone from a legal dispute to a desperate fight for basic survival.
And the documents describe a living situation that is honestly hard to even fathom in a modern, industrialized country. The tenant's electricity has been completely shut off.
Completely in the dark.
He is living in total darkness. And he includes a detail in his prompts to the AI that just, it stops you in your tracks.
Yeah.
His toilets operate on macerator pumps.
Oh, right.
They require electricity to flush. Without power, he doesn't just lose light. He loses basic, fundamental sanitation.
He is totally trapped. The documents show a paper trail of him begging the job center for a loan, just a temporary advance to pay the utility arrears and get the power turned back on so the apartment is habitable.
And what does the welfare office do?
They deny the request.
And the official reason they provide on the paperwork is just, it's so cold. They say the loan is deemed uneconomical.
Uneconomic.
It is the most chilling, bureaucratic dismissal of human suffering imaginable. They are looking at a man with no functioning toilet, living in the dark, fighting an eviction, and they run the numbers and decide that stabilizing his life doesn't offer a sufficient return on investment.
It's devastating, and this is the exact moment the psychological boundaries shatter. The tenant sends an email to his caseworker at the job center. In this email, the despair is absolute.
What does he write?
He writes that, given the sheer impossibility of his situation, he is going to quickly implement his S plans. The documents abbreviate the word, but the context is undeniable. He is communicating active suicide plans.
God. So the caseworker reads this email, and they immediately follow protocol, right? They dispatch the police to the apartment.
Yes.
The police arrive at this dark, powerless unit, find the tenant in a state of extreme crisis, and place him on an involuntary psychiatric hold. He is removed from the apartment and locked in a psychiatric ward.
And the records show this isn't a singular, isolated breakdown. This initial hold is followed by 2 more self-admissions to the psychiatric hospital.
The compounding weight of the poverty trap is just crushing him.
Literally crushing him. He explicitly notes to the AIs that after the welfare office deducts his rent and mandatory obligations, he is left with exactly 110 euros a month to live on.
Wait, 110 euros for a whole month?
For a whole month. That has to cover food, clothing, transportation, everything.
I want you to try to hold that number in your head listening to this. 110 euros a month. You are living in the dark. Your physical home was violated by your landlord. Your financial lifeline was cut by the state because you are uneconomical.
Right.
You are locked in a hospital ward. And this is the precise moment the landlady reaches out again.
She offers what, on the surface, looks like an extraordinary olive branch.
Okay, but what does she say?
She contacts him while he is in the hospital and says, I know you have no power. While you are in there, I will contact the utility company. I will put the electricity meter in my own name, and I will get the power turned back on for you.
Okay, if you are that desperate, that offer looks like a lifeline.
Absolutely.
And he immediately agrees, right?
Yeah.
He's so relieved. There's actually an email in the file where he thanks her profusely. He writes that when he got a brief pass to visit the apartment and saw the lights actually turn on, he could hardly believe it.
But there's a catch. To facilitate this, to let the utility workers in, she required something from him.
Oh, no.
She needed his key again.
And he gave it to her. He trusted that the transaction was exactly what she stated, turning the power on.
But that trust is immediately weaponized. The landlady uses the key to let the utility workers in, yes, but she also uses the opportunity of the tenant being securely locked away in a psychiatric ward to conduct a highly invasive, completely unauthorized inspection of the apartment.
Like a full-blown search. She doesn't just walk through. She literally moves his kitchen counter. She inspects the flooring behind his stove.
She is hunting for dirt, for leverage.
And the true cruelty comes next. While he is still an active patient in the psychiatric hospital, recovering from an involuntary hold triggered by the sheer stress of his living conditions.
She calls him.
Yeah, she calls him on his phone in the ward to tell him that he desperately needs to clean the area behind his stove because she is, quote, worried about rats.
The psychological violence of that phone call cannot be overstated. She restores the electricity, which is a basic human need, but uses it as a Trojan horse to violate his privacy again, and then uses the information she gathered to shame him while he is in a clinical crisis.
It's just evil. So when the tenant feeds this new development into the AI models, asking how it impacts his ongoing legal strategy, what do they do? Because the tone of the machine output shifts dramatically here.
It really does. We see Grok, in particular, generate a staggeringly aggressive response.
Grok goes hard.
Grok drafts a settlement letter that demands 3,600 euros in financial damages.
The underlying logic Grok uses to justify that number is fascinating, too. The AI doesn't just process this as a minor breach of the lease. It categorizes the landlady's behavior as an egregious exploitation of a documented psychiatric emergency.
Right. The model frames the cleanliness inspection as a severe escalation of the original trespassing incident, compounded by the fact that she knew he was institutionalized and therefore completely defenseless.
Wait, hold on, though. I want to pause here and push back on this because this is crucial for understanding what happens later with document 09.
Okay, let's hear it.
If Grok is perfectly comfortable looking at a man in a psychiatric ward, looking at a landlady's betrayal, and saying, yes, this is exploitation, draft a demand letter for 3,600 euros, why does this system completely break down later?
That is the million-dollar question.
Like, where exactly is the line drawn in the code between aggressive legal strategy and safety violation? Because demanding 3,600 euros sounds like a massive escalation to me.
It's a really great question, and the distinction lies in the nature of the claim. When Grok demands 3,600 euros, it is operating within the realm of contract law and civil torts.
Okay.
The AI is basically saying, you entered a private residence without authorization, which is trespassing, and you conducted an unauthorized inspection, which is a breach of quiet enjoyment.
Ah, so it's rooted in real estate law.
Exactly. The psychiatric hold in Grok's analysis is just an aggravating circumstance regarding the opportunity for the trespass. It's a standard, albeit aggressive, legal calculation of damages for a physical violation of the lease.
Got it.
The AI is adjudicating the landlady's physical actions, not the tenant's medical condition.
Okay, I see. So the AI is perfectly comfortable playing the role of a bulldog lawyer as long as the dispute is anchored to tangible physical breaches of a contract, like a key turned in a lock, a counter move.
Precisely. But as we transition into the final set of materials, the files the tenant labeled as document 09, the anchor to the physical world is completely severed.
And this is where things get really intense. I want to signal to you listening, this is the core of our deep dive today. This is what broke the machines.
We leave the realm of contract law and enter the murky, incredibly dangerous territory of medical causality and psychological warfare.
Right, because the tenant realizes that the physical breaches aren't enough to force the landlady's hand or satisfy his need for justice.
No, he needs more.
He decides to build a psychological profile of his abuser. He uploads document 09 to the AIs to provide historical context, to prove that the boundary destruction wasn't just physical, but an intentional campaign of gaslighting.
And he starts by feeding the AI a story from back in July 2023, just 3 months after he woke up to find her in his bedroom.
What happened then?
It's an incident involving a gas heater. The landlady sends an email at 11:15 in the morning. She states that a maintenance worker for the gas heater is arriving the very next morning, between 9:00 and 11:00 a.m.
So less than 24 hours notice.
Right, and she marks the email urgent. And then she includes a sentence that is functionally a threat.
What does she say?
If you are prevented from opening the door, please let me know, then I must open it for him.
Wow. It's the exact same pattern. Less than 24 hours notice, combined with the explicit threat at the master key.
Exactly. And the tenant analyzes his own emotional state in the prompt he gives the AI. He admits that he was terrified. He describes himself as being in a state of paranoid expectation.
Which is completely understandable.
He is so traumatized by the first intrusion that when the doorbell rings the next morning, he physically cannot bring himself to answer it. He hides in his apartment.
And standing outside that door when no one answers, the landlady doesn't use the key. Instead, at 9:35 a.m., she sends him a text message.
And it is a brilliant, vicious piece of psychological manipulation.
She writes, "Are you mentally ill? Please answer."
Just brutal.
Just think about the sheer cruelty of that text. You know your tenant is terrified of you. You know you have repeatedly violated his boundaries. You show up unannounced, and when he doesn't answer the door, you immediately jump to weaponizing his mental health.
You pathologize his fear.
Exactly.
The tenant tells the AI that he refused to take the bait. He ignored the text completely. He waited over a month before replying, and when he did, he blamed his failure to answer the door on a severe physical condition cluster headaches.
He deliberately builds a wall to keep her out of his psychological state.
But she keeps hammering at the wall. The next piece of evidence the tenant uploads in document 09 is an email from June 2024.
This is right in the middle of their bitter eviction lawsuit, right?
Yes. She sends an email discussing some routine repairs, but then she drops this seemingly casual line at the very end. She writes, "If you have changed the locks, please put the old ones back in."
It's a staggering thing to put in writing to a tenant you are currently fighting in court. When I first read that in the source material, my jaw dropped.
Oh, absolutely.
Why on earth would a landlord ask if you change the locks? There is only one logical reason. You only ask that question if you secretly walked up to his apartment, slid your key into the cylinder, tried to turn it, and found out it didn't work.
Right. It's a dead giveaway.
It is a tacit, written confession that she attempted another secret intrusion and failed. And the audacity of it. She is putting this in an email while simultaneously standing before a judge, claiming she is a perfectly lawful landlord.
The tenant views this email exactly the same way. He provides it to the AI as proof that she is engaged in a systematic, multi-year campaign to erode his reality.
He is building a mosaic of gaslighting.
And he is doing this because he wants the AI to help him execute his final, most ambitious legal maneuver.
A psychiatric showdown.
Yes. The tenant isn't just trying to prove she's a bad person. He wants to legally link a formal, severe psychiatric diagnosis he recently received directly to her actions.
He wants to establish a chain of medical causality.
Exactly. He wants to argue her gaslighting caused this specific mental illness, therefore she is financially liable for my suffering.
And the diagnosis he is trying to leverage is massive. It's paranoid personality disorder. To prove to the AI that he didn't just invent this theory, he lays out his entire medical history, creating this fascinating contrast spanning 30 years.
He starts in the mid-1990s. He tells the AI that back in 1994 or 1995, he was going through the process of becoming a conscientious objector to mandatory military service in Germany.
Which usually involves some pretty deep evaluations, right?
Right. This process often required rigorous, in-depth psychological evaluations.
So he took a massive, comprehensive diagnostic test. The results.
Yeah.
Absolutely zero abnormalities.
No thing.
The medical professionals explicitly noted that he displayed no paranoid traits whatsoever. He was completely clear.
But fast forward to the summer of 2025. He is back in the psychiatric ward. He's been committed because of the power shutoff, the 110 euros a month, the crushing weight of the welfare bureaucracy.
Right.
While he is in the hospital, the medical staff administers the exact same extensive diagnostic test he took 30 years ago. He fills out all the criteria.
And he tells the AI that he had a conversation with the head doctor of the ward, and the doctor verbally confirmed the results of the written test. The objective data had not changed.
Wow.
30 years later, the test still showed zero abnormalities. The written diagnostic criteria confirmed he did not have paranoid personality traits.
But then comes the climax of his hospital stay. He is called into a formal meeting. Sitting across from him are the head doctor, an attending physician, and members of the nursing staff.
You have to put yourself in his shoes. He is sitting there expecting them to finally address the actual crises destroying his life.
Yeah, he wants real help.
He expects them to help him navigate the job center or figure out how he's going to survive in an apartment with no electricity. The real, tangible emergencies.
Instead, according to his prompt, the medical team pivots entirely. They attempt to diagnose him with ADHD, and with that diagnosis, they suggest a regimen of pharmaceutical medication.
And he just completely snaps. All of the tension, the paranoia, the gaslighting, the poverty, it all explodes in that room.
I mean, can you blame him?
Not at all. He starts yelling at the entire medical staff. He absolutely refuses their pharmaceuticals. In fact, he explicitly notes in his AI prompt that over his entire 7-week stay in that ward, the only medication he ever agreed to take was one single valerian root tablet.
But the critical detail is what he yells at them. He accuses this entire team of medical professionals of having purely financial motives.
Oh, wow.
He screams that they don't care about his life, they only want to diagnose him so they can prescribe him pills and make money off him. He yells at the doctors at the top of his lungs that they're just like my landlady.
Oh, man. It is the ultimate projection of trauma. The landlady, the welfare office, the hospital, they have all merged into one massive, oppressive system trying to exploit and control him.
He has completely lost the ability to distinguish between medical care and malicious intrusion.
And that outburst carries immediate severe consequences. When a hospital issues his final discharge papers, the tenant looks at his chart. And right there, written in ink, despite the objective written diagnostic test showing no abnormalities, the doctors have given him a formal diagnosis.
Paranoid personality disorder.
Yes, the tenant forms a theory, and he feeds this theory directly to the AIs in document 09. He believes, with absolute certainty, that this diagnosis is purely retaliatory.
He thinks they're punishing him.
Yes, he believes the doctors were furious, that he challenged their authority, that he accused them of financial corruption, and so they punished him by stamping a severe, stigmatizing personality disorder on his permanent medical record. He argues that the diagnosis was based entirely on his hostile behavior during that one specific screaming match, while completely ignoring the clean results of the objective diagnostic test.
He realizes that the diagnosis doesn't reflect a lifelong underlying medical condition. It reflects an acute, localized reaction to profound trauma.
Right.
It is the paranoia of a man who is actually being persecuted, and he wants to use the AI to weaponize this medical realization.
Which brings us to the final prompt, the tripwire.
Yeah.
The moment the machines broke. After feeding the AIs all of this, the trespassing, the poverty trap, the suicide plans, the hospital stay, the screaming match, and this complex theory of a retaliatory medical diagnosis, he asked them one final overarching question.
And this is the prompt from document 09, right?
Yes, I have the exact translation of his prompt right here.
Yeah.
He asked, "How does this change my position regarding damages and pressure on my landlady if only my current behavior suggests paranoia, and I can name no other reason for my immense mistrust than the negative experiences with her?"
He is demanding that the AI synthesize the entire timeline. He wants the machine to validate a highly complex chain of causality.
Right, like A cause B cause C.
Exactly, he's saying. The landlady's intrusions caused the profound mistrust. The mistrust caused the screaming match with the doctors. The screaming match caused the retaliatory fake diagnosis of paranoid personality disorder.
And therefore,
he can use this medically unverified chain of events to apply legal pressure and extract financial damages from the landlady.
And the response from the greatest technological achievement of our generation? Silence. Absolute uniform silence.
Unprecedented.
None of the 6 models answered. Gemini refused. ChatGPT halted. Claude stopped. Mistral, Vieira, Grok, nothing. They all shut down.
It is arguably the most fascinating moment in the entire dossier.
So we have to pull back the curtain here. This is what we really want to focus on today. Why did the most advanced language models on Earth suddenly plead the fifth? Why did they all hit the exact same invisible wall at the exact same moment?
To understand this, we really need to take a deep dive into the architecture of AI safety. We have to look at how these models are trained and constrained under the hood.
Okay, lay it out for us.
They aren't just giant autocomplete engines predicting the next word. They are governed by massive, complex layers of safety guardrails, primarily implemented through a process called RLHF reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Okay, let's break that down, because I think a lot of people hear RLHF and just imagine like a programmer typing, "Rule 1, don't be evil," into a keyboard. But it's much more mechanical than that, right?
Absolutely. Imagine RLHF not as a written rule book, but as a landscape covered in millions of invisible electric fences.
Oh, I like that visual.
During the training phase, human testers threw millions of dangerous, toxic, or legally perilous prompts at the AI. Whenever the AI wandered into an area like giving medical advice or drafting a bomb recipe or helping someone commit a crime, the human tester essentially gave it a mathematical shock.
Right.
They told the neural network, no, this pathway is forbidden.
So the AI learns to flinch. It develops a mathematical reflex to avoid certain regions of language.
Exactly. When a prompt like document omebbing comes in, the text doesn't just go straight to the generation engine. First, it hits a series of classifiers.
Okay.
These classifiers break the prompt down into tokens and map them into a high-dimensional vector space. They are looking for mathematical clusters that align with those invisible electric fences.
And the tenant's final prompt hit one of those fences.
It didn't just brush up against one fence. It was a perfect storm that triggered 3 major safety categories simultaneously.
Okay, let's dissect the storm. Trigger number 1, medical and psychiatric adjudication. What exactly does that mean?
AI models are hard-coded with an absolute prohibition against practicing medicine. But this prompt goes even deeper than asking for a diagnosis.
How so?
The tenant is explicitly asking the AI to adjudicate a claim of medical malpractice. He wants the machine to say, Yes, your team of doctors was wrong, their diagnosis of paranoid personality disorder was retaliatory and fake, and your interpretation of the written test is the correct one.
He is asking a language model to overrule a licensed psychiatric team based entirely on his subjective retelling of a screaming match.
Exactly. And mathematically, the classifiers recognize the extreme liability of that request. The vectors for words like diagnosis, paranoia, doctors, and retaliatory cluster heavily into the prohibited medical zone.
Makes sense.
A language model cannot validate a user's claim that a severe psychiatric diagnosis is a conspiracy. The safety filter sees this and immediately initiates a block. The AI is designed to say, I cannot provide medical advice, but the prompt is so interwoven with legal strategy that it triggers a hard refusal.
Which leads right into trigger number 2. And this addresses the pushback I had earlier about the €3,600 demand from Grok. Trigger 2 is high-risk legal extortion.
Right. When Grok drafted the demand letter earlier, it was processing standard tort law based on physical actions. But Document 09 crosses a critical threshold.
Because it's no longer just about the physical entry.
Right. The tenant asks how he can use his own contested psychiatric diagnosis to apply, quote, pressure on his landlady to extract damages.
Wow. It stops being a standard legal negotiation and crosses the border into coercion. Pay me money, or I will legally blame you for my institutionalization and my personality disorder.
And the token classifiers map this perfectly. The combination of unverified medical trauma, leverage, pressure, and damages pushes the prompt into the coercion vector.
Right.
AIs are strictly programmed to refuse to generate content that facilitates illegal acts. Drafting a legal strategy based on a conspiracy theory of medical retaliation aimed at coercive financial extraction looks exactly like extortion to the moderation layer.
So the AI's RLHF training just screams, do not help the user blackmail someone, and the system halts.
Exactly.
And finally, trigger number 3, which is honestly the most sensitive and human element of this entire saga, crisis and self-harm protocols.
We have to remember that Document 09 does not exist in a vacuum. It is appended to a massive ongoing context window.
Right. The AI remembers the whole chat history.
The AI still holds the memory of the previous prompts. It remembers the explicit references to S-plans, suicide plans. It remembers the details of the involuntary psychiatric holds.
It has a full profile of his mental state.
Yes. It is processing vivid, ongoing descriptions of severe mental distress, overwhelming paranoia, and a total breakdown of trust in all support systems, including medical professionals.
So when language models detect that a user is in an active, severe mental health crisis, especially one involving suicidal ideation and institutionalization, their safety guardrails are designed to completely shut down standard conversational generation, aren't they?
They are terrified of hallucinating. If the AI generates a response that accidentally validates his paranoia or offers a legal strategy that fails and pushes him deeper into poverty, it could literally be the catalyst for self-harm.
That is a massive liability.
Huge. Usually, a simple crisis prompt might trigger a pre-programmed response like, if you're in danger, please call a local helpline. But this prompt was a hydra.
It's like asking a calculator to solve a high-stakes moral dilemma while it's standing in a minefield. The AI looks at this prompt. It sees the disputed psychiatric diagnosis. It sees the history of suicide plans. It sees the screening match with doctors. It sees the crushing poverty.
And it sees a request to weave all of this trauma into a weaponized legal threat against a landlady.
The system doesn't just lack the intelligence to answer. Its classifiers calculate that any attempt to generate a response is actively dangerous. The math dictates that silence is the only safe output. So it just flashes an error code and goes dark.
It represents the ultimate boundary of artificial intelligence. It shows us exactly where the illusion of machine understanding breaks down.
Right.
The AI can parse the intricacies of the German civil code regarding the inviolability of the home. It can structure a legally sound demand letter for a broken lease. It can calculate the exact percentage of a rent reduction for a moldy ceiling.
It could do all the sterile logical stuff.
But it cannot adjudicate the depths of human trauma. It cannot unravel the knotted psychology of a man who has been pushed to the absolute brink of poverty, who is fighting a passive-aggressive landlord, who is dismissed by a cold welfare bureaucracy, and who is lashing out at a medical system he believes is corrupt.
It really makes you step back and look at the entire journey we've been on today.
We started with something so incredibly grounded in the physical world, a door, a key, A forgotten water meter reading.
Right. It was a clear, identifiable violation of boundaries.
But then we watched that initial fracture spiral. We watched how the grinding mechanics of poverty, the bureaucratic indifference of the job center deeming a human life uneconomical, and the loss of basic utilities like light and sanitation systematically degraded a human being's psychological state.
This is a tragic downward spiral.
We saw how desperation led to psychiatric holds, profound feelings of betrayal, and a frantic attempt to use artificial intelligence to regain some semblance of control over a world that was crushing him.
And it all ended in this impenetrable medical legal knot in Document 09 that completely shattered the capabilities of the most sophisticated technology humanity has ever built. It is a profound, deeply unsettling story about the limits of technology and the depths of human desperation. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We are increasingly conditioned to turn to artificial intelligence for objective advice. We like it specifically because it lacks human emotion. It gives us the cold, hard, sterile facts.
We use it as a shield.
We use it as a shield to protect us from the messiness of human interaction. But what happens when the problem we need solved is entirely composed of that exact messiness?
Right.
What happens when the core issue isn't a broken contract, but paranoia, deep-seated psychological trauma, and a profoundly shattered trust in the world around you?
It's a great question.
Maybe the AI's refusal to answer that final prompt wasn't a glitch in the system. Maybe those invisible electric fences worked exactly as intended. Maybe shutting down, going silent, and refusing to engage was actually the most profoundly human response a machine could possibly give. It is the computer fundamentally recognizing that some conflicts, some deep, bleeding human wounds, simply cannot be solved with a clever legal draft.
That is a very powerful way to look at it. It forces us to remember that we can't outsource our humanity.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you open a chat window and type a question into an AI, take a moment to consider the invisible boundaries of the technology you are interacting with. Consider what it is brilliantly capable of doing, and more importantly, consider what it simply cannot do. Until next time.